Hey, welcome back to Drowning in Yarn. I'm Caleb. Today I wanted to do a tutorial on combination knitting, specifically on showing you how I combination purl, which makes knitting one by one ribbing for me as a continental knitter a lot quicker. It is a super simple way to purl, and it can help you tighten up your purls, it can help you knit faster, and it can just help you have a more enjoyable time knitting. If you're like me, purling isn't your favorite, and so anything that you can do to help you just enjoy it a little bit more is great. Now, there is no right or wrong way to knit. Obviously, this is just how I knit, and I posted a video this week where I showed myself knitting on a sweater that is one by one ribbing, and people were just interested in the way that I knit, so I thought I would just do this little video. The best way to knit is whatever way you enjoy knitting, so watch this, see if you like it, try it if you want. You can try it if you're an English knitter, you can try it if you're a continental knitter, and if you don't want, you just maybe learn something new. But I'm going to jump right in and show you how I knit. So first, just as a refresher, I want to just talk about the structure of the knit stitch. I think it's really helpful to think about the structure of your stitches whenever you're trying to do something new or learn something new, because it helps you kind of understand how to do the new thing and what's different about it. So each knit stitch is just a loop through a loop, right? So you have this one loop with the right leg and the left leg, and it comes up through this other loop that's the same. Typically in, I guess, what we'll call Western style knitting, which you'll kind of understand in a minute, the right leg is in front of your needle, and the way that you form that stitch is by wrapping your yarn counterclockwise around your needle and pulling it through. So that situates your resulting stitch with the right leg in front, the left leg behind. Now when you're purling, you bring your yarn in front, you come in through the back, you wrap your yarn around counterclockwise, you pull it through, and your resulting stitch that's purled is right leg in front, left leg in back. So that's how you would typically knit. So I'm just gonna knit a couple of stitches, and we'll see that all happening again, and I will slow it down. You'll notice that I kind of hold my finger up really high whenever I am doing continental knitting. That is not really the ideal way to do it. So I'm just doing ribbing, knit one, purl one. So that is typically how you would knit. Now I'm going to show you how I knit, which is combination knitting, where your purl stitches have the right leg behind the needle. And I'm going to show you why. The reason that it's called combination knitting is because knitting with your leading leg, so this right leg of the stitch here, knitting with the leading leg ending up in front of your needle is like the Western style of knitting. Whenever that leading leg ends up behind your needle, that is an Eastern style of knitting from what I understand. Please correct me if I'm wrong. This is what I've kind of learned from my research about combination knitting. And combination knitting is when you knit the Western style, so right leg ends up in front, and you purl the Eastern style, which you wrap your yarn clockwise around your needle, and the right leg ends up behind your needle. Oftentimes we'll call that stitch twisted. Typically you go in through whatever piece of yarn is in front of your needle, and if I do that here, because that stitch was situated with the right leg behind, look what happens to this stitch. It twists. So if I wanted to knit this purl stitch, I would go into the front, and that front is pointing out to the right. So I would go into the front and just knit it, and that untwists that stitch. Let me do that again. So when my right leg is behind my needle, the front of the stitch is now pointing off to the right, so I can just enter through the front, knit it, and it untwists my stitch. When the right leg of your stitch is in front of your needle, the front of your stitch is pointing off to the left. So you go in, you knit it. Sorry, let me take it back so I can now show you how I purl again. So this stitch is a purl stitch. So I just grab it and wrap it clockwise, which when you're a continental knitter and you're holding your yarn in left hand, just means that I just pick that yarn, knit, I come in through the back of the stitch. So I just put my needle back behind the right leg, push forward a little bit, and wrap my yarn clockwise. Now, I'm doing it a little bit slow here, but this method allows you to really get some speed. And because I knit continental or combination, while knitting continental, I guess, I hold the yarn in my left hand. And so moving the yarn from behind the needle to in front of the needle is this trivial motion here. So suddenly ribbing becomes not so bad. I don't know. I never mind 1x1 ribbing. I'm knitting this hat in Brooklyn Tweed Rancho 3. This is a Hansmeier hat in the colorway Saddle if you're interested. And I'm knitting this hat all in 1x1 ribbing, and I'm knitting a sweater that's entirely in 1x1 ribbing. And I'm able to fly through it because of the way that I knit combination style whenever I'm knitting ribbing. The other benefits to this, now I've read this from isolda.com, I believe. I'll leave a link down below, but whenever you are taking your yarn the typical way, so if I were to purl a Western way, I have to wrap my yarn counterclockwise, so you can see my yarn's going all the way around, and then I pull it through. That uses a lot of yarn, and so you have a greater tendency or a greater risk of introducing extra yarn into your stitch that can kind of hang out and create a looser purl. Whereas whenever I purl, like all the yarn that I need to make that stitch is like this little amount, and then it's just like forms itself. I guess just the shorter path and the tension on it whenever I create the stitch has a tendency to create a tighter purl, which if you're a continental knitter, you might form looser purls and end up with issues with that. And so learning this combination style of purling can really help with that. So that is how I knit purl stitches. I do this all the time. It's super fast, it's super simple. You can do this if you're an English knitter as well. You're just gonna wrap on your purls the opposite way that you typically would. Instead of going counterclockwise, you will just wrap your yarn clockwise. I don't know, because I'm not an English knitter, how much more efficient that might be or whatever, but you can do it as well if you want to tighten up your purl stitches or just try something new. But for continental knitters, it makes purling so simple. So thanks for watching. I hope that was enjoyable and informative. Don't forget to like this video if you haven't already, and subscribe if you want to see other videos I have coming up in the future. Leave a comment down below and let me know if you have any questions, any tips for me, or if you are giving it a try and how it goes. Until next time, enjoy your knitting.